What is going on, everyone? Anthony Drew Gary here, host of the How To Show, where we talk about optimizing life, money, and happiness one how-to at a time. And this week, I think I'm going to tackle all three of those, life, money, and happiness, with a little bit of an episode on does it make sense to go back to school? And I want to give a shout out to Connor, who is one of our former interns. He and I had a phone conversation about this last week. Spent about 20 minutes on the phone with Connor just talking through this concept of does it make sense to go back to school? Does it make sense to get that continuing education now versus in the future? And different thoughts like that. And so I want to preface that there's no one-size-fits-all solution for this type of conversation. And this largely looks a lot different for when I ask, does it make sense to go back to school in the context of finishing high school versus finishing your undergrad versus going on to get some sort of advanced degree. And so tackling each one of those individually is probably too complicated for one scope of video. So what we're going to focus on right now is, does it make sense to go and get that advanced degree? And potentially I make some of those other content pieces later on for everybody's consumption. But the question that becomes of this is, does it make sense to go and get that advanced degree? And if so, when do you do it? And the way that I look at this is, you've basically got to break this down into a couple of different baskets of information. Number one is, who are you trying to impress? Number two is, what are you looking to prove? And number three is, do you need someone to certify you? And so when we break these all down, the who are you trying to impress, I think of that mainly in the sense of, are you trying to get the attention of certain employers? And not so much, hey, look, mom and dad, look what I can do. And so I want to make sure that we're focusing in on that, does it make sense for you to be in a circumstance where going and getting that advanced degree is worthwhile to your prospectus in terms of landing, maybe a better job, a higher paying job, a more rewarding job, whatever the case may be. And you have to weigh that against the fact that in reality, these programs all cost money, tens of thousands of dollars, in fact, sometimes even more than that. And so the conversation I was having most recently, it was essentially a program where at the undergraduate level, you can tack on a little bit of extra information, a little bit of extra classwork to the back end, and maybe instead of 4 years, you get in 5 or 5.5 your bachelor's degree and your advanced degree. And with running the risk of throwing the academic institutions under the bus, I look at that circumstance as such a way that this is an opportunity for the colleges and universities to extract every last dollar of tuition from you that they possibly can before you decide that you're no longer interested in them. And maybe that's a jaded view of the world. Let me know in the comments if you completely disagree with that, but that's just the mindset that I'm having here. A 4-year degree in finance as compared to a 5-year degree in business administration, bachelor's versus master's, potentially graduating at 23 versus 24. In my mind, I just don't know that the return on investment is there at that point in time in your career, especially in the sense that, I weigh this circumstance, if the entry level for a finance student is making somewhere in the $50,000 to $70,000 range, if you go and spend an extra $30,000 on your tuition, are you going to see that in any short order at the beginning of your career? And those are the types of questions that you need to be asking yourself that all focus around that. Who are you trying to impress with that extra education? And does it make sense for you on an economic basis? And I say that in an economic sense because I don't want to lose sight of the fact that the general idea is that you go to institutions of higher education with the anticipated outcome on the back end that you are going to be a higher earner than had you not done it. Otherwise, you can jump on Coursera, you can jump on MIT's open courseware circumstances, you can jump on YouTube University of all things right here where we're talking about things live, and you can learn skills that'll benefit you in the marketplace without having to pay tuition. So you've got to make sure that there's a light at the end of this tunnel and that it's not a train coming at you. So then the next piece to this is, again, what are you looking to prove? And I really structure this in the sort of way that if you're in a circumstance where there's a little bit of time after you've graduated from undergrad, you're looking to go in, looking to get that advanced degree, is there a pathway or a pivot or something that makes this make sense? And the best example that I can think of these usually comes in the form of the radio commercials where you have a bachelor's degree in something else and there's some extenuating higher education program that will allow you to make a career pivot into something else, the most common of which is usually some other bachelor's program into a nursing bachelor's program. Something where you need specific skills and you need a specific certification in order to progress in that career trajectory. And so that's a circumstance where you got to still weigh the pros and cons, both emotionally, time taken, and financially, to determine whether or not that makes sense. But the circumstances where you have those sort of certification gatekeepers, I think it makes this scenario a little more cut and dry as to whether it makes sense. And then again, that last one is, do you need someone to certify you? I think to myself, in my own life, I went through an MBA program, and there were folks that basically concentrated in entrepreneurship within the MBA program. And the reality of the situation is does this degree certify that you can go and run a business? No, it doesn't. What certifies that you can run a business is that you have some experience doing it and that you have the wherewithal to roll with the punches, get knocked down, get back up again, and provide a service in the marketplace that someone is willing to pay for. Whether or not you have initials after your name is irrelevant in most of the small business circumstances that I'm familiar with. And so those are the types of things that I'm thinking of. But the next piece to this, a little bit of a pivot, I suppose, in the thinking here is there another way to gain the skills that you are looking to achieve with that advanced degree? Without necessarily having to pay for it. And that's just something that's a thought process of optimization that just wrestles in my heartstrings. Is there a better or more efficient way to do things? That's how I like to frame things like that. And so I'm just thinking, before I'm going into that, advanced degree program, I would be an advocate of finding people who are in those future jobs that you might think are interesting and take them out to breakfast. If you can find them on LinkedIn, you can find them on Facebook, you can find them through referrals, whoever it is. Buy as many of these people breakfast as you can. And I use breakfast a little liberally here because it's typically a less expensive meal. But if you need to do it during lunch or have a cup of coffee, whatever you're into, ultimately for, let's call it $20 low end, $50 real high end if you get really crazy with brunch or whatever it is, and just extract the information from the people in the trenches that are doing the things that you want to be doing. And find out, just based on their stories, is this something that I can identify with? And if it is there a pathway to hit the cutting room floor without necessarily going back for that degree? Just things to think about here. And so to wrap all of this up, I'm sitting here and really feeling like I'm beating down on the educational system, and I don't think that's necessarily fair. It's also not necessarily fair for me to do that because it could sound as hypocritical because I went through those programs. But there was an opportunity in my life to make a career pivot, but for me going and enrolling in those programs, I would have not had the opportunities to meet the folks that I've been doing work with for the last 5 years. And so every circumstance is different. Every set of skills that you might obtain can be obtained in multiple different ways. Going back to school is one of them. Hitting the school of hard knocks, having interviews, just having conversations with folks is the other way. And I just want to encourage you to explore all of the options here before you go and throw 20, 30, 40, 50 grand on an advanced degree. That is going to wrap up this episode of the How To Show. Hopefully this was of some benefit for you. If you're wrestling with this, leave me a comment down below. Let me know about it. And I'm curious if anything in my experience world can be of a value to you. Happy to talk through with you and share with you as I can. As always, if you're looking to transact real estate in the Indianapolis market, you can get in touch with me in the comments or at IndyDwell.com. And if you think there's anybody in your world that this video would resonate with, feel free to share it with them. It's the best way to get my content out and to get ideas flowing that may be beneficial to other people around me and around you. So that's going to bring this episode of the show to a close. This is Anthony Drew Gary, host of The How To Show, signing off.